Does weightlifting work? Depends. A lot of people benefit, a lot of people wreck from it. But by the end of this video, you'll know exactly why, how, and when to use weightlifting. Plus 3 secrets that help me build more strength and power than anything else. Bar none. Pun. Lee Weiland, Pacific Rim Athletics, creator of Powerbatics, and welcome to training. Even though I advocate 99% bodyweight strength and skills training, there's a time and place for everything. A couple decades ago, I lifted, and my main goals were bench press, squat, and deadlift, basically powerlifting, to help my acrobatics and martial arts. Did it help? Stay to find out. And when I trained at this gym for Muay Thai and grappling, I told my coach about my powerlifting that I wanted to be 200 pounds and 5% body fat. And he asked, why? I'll let you know what my answer was in a moment, but that's my same question to you today if you're using weights. Why? What are you trying to accomplish? As you know, my main focus is bodyweight strength and skill. This involves everything from muscle ups to human flags, handstands, flares, flips, katas, and surfing. Now, there have been times I've used weights and it's given me significant improvement in my strength, but weights have also caused me poor athleticism, sluggishness, and even injuries and negative consequences. This leads to the first section. Why should you use weightlifting? Number 1, it involves muscle. At one point in my life, I put on 30 pounds of muscle doing weights. But years later, after a bicep tear, I actually dwindled down to the size of a twig and actually rebuilt all the way back up to 185 pounds of solid muscle using only body weight and actually got a lot stronger. But let's start at the beginning. When I first started weightlifting, I was what's called a hard gainer. I was 6 feet tall and weighed about 155 pounds, skinny. Then I did Mondays, chest and tries, Wednesdays, back and bis, Friday, legs, plus 6 meals per day, 3 of which were 50-gram protein drinks, plus a dozen eggs. It took me 3 months to get to 185 pounds doing 3 days per week using weights, but it comes at a big cost. That muscle will not always be athletic because it's not working together holistically in skills since it's separated into specific body parts. It will not be fast because speed training is completely different. It will not be explosive because training for explosive power is also completely different. You might also gain extra fat you didn't want, and you'll be extremely tight if you're not doing just as much stretching. This method leads to major weak links, and it even made me slow and sluggish doing acrobatics and martial arts. We'll talk about how to build flexibility, speed, and power though in a minute, but it does build muscle quickly. So the best way to use weights to build muscle is periodically. For example, 2 or 3 months out of the year, or until you get what you want out of it, then move on. But it's actually unnecessary unless you like doing it. The rest of the time should be spent doing things we'll talk about today. And here's a piece of classified info. Lifting weights is just resistance training. The weights are the resistance, and the resistance leads to hypertrophy for muscle growth. The secret is that bodyweight strength is also resistance training, and the resistance is the higher levels of difficulty. Building up to a handstand push-up is similar to the weight involved in a shoulder press using 180 pounds, for example. A planche push-up is like a bench press, but these bodyweight moves are building holistic strength and the ability for your body to move as a unit. Even a single leg squat is loading one leg with your entire body weight. And then using a weight vest intensifies the lift, adding more hypertrophy, more strength, more everything. A fun one I did was hang 3 45-pound plates from a belt and do dips on rings. I don't have any videos of that, but it was a funny sight. Patrick and Venny are both good examples too. They've used weights, but also faced a number of tightness, stiffness, and immobility issues to the point of injury. Venny has had 5 hip surgeries, shoulder surgery, and Patrick has had rotator cuff issues and 2 Achilles tears. And I've got examples from thousands of applicants for training with similar situations: herniated discs, blown shoulders, everything. But now Venny and Patrick are crushing it and able to do handstands, V-stands, muscle ups, have plenty of muscle and visible abs. Personally, I even exasperated back pain and rotator cuff issues from weightlifting, but using the principles I'm showing you, I'm stronger than ever and doing handstands, flares, flips, and everything else you see. There's a couple other reasons that weightlifting should be used. Years later, after my hard gainer days, I shifted to powerlifting. I focused on bench press, deadlift, and squat. Around this time is when I wanted to be over 200 pounds and 5% body fat. My answer to my coach was that I wanted the muscle and the power. The theory is that powerlifting recruits a lot of muscle fiber and also activates the central nervous system, especially 1-rep maxing. I did reach significant numbers on all 3 lifts and got a lot stronger, and I became over 200 pounds with less than 10% body fat, but I didn't necessarily get more powerful. Sure, it can develop power when done with certain protocols and bands and other stuff, but the complexity and risk increases. And there's of course Olympic lifting, which is its own entire sport, but none of that helps you build powerful skill or ninja-like movement. It's like having a bunch of gas, but owning no Ferrari. Try it. Eat a dozen eggs a day and bench press. See how you feel. All jokes aside, the same way that weightlifting can build muscle fast, powerlifting can build strength fast. But this also came with several setbacks because of intense lower back pain due to deadlifts. And this is common, even with good form. And if you're trying to learn new skills and at the same time lifting heavy weight, it'll make it very difficult because of recovery time. And again, we shouldn't be doing this year round. 2 or 3 months out of the year, or until you get what you want out of it, then move on. Sometimes it just feels unnecessary though. But in terms of power output, let me ask you something critical. How long does it take to do a really heavy bench press, squat, or deadlift? Just 1 rep takes a long time. It's slow, like 15 long seconds. But power is force times velocity. It's speed. Like Rocky's coach Mick says, we need speed.
What we need. We need greasy, fast speed.
Now this may or may not apply to you, but I'll share another secret that helped build more strength and power than anything else, bar none. This secret even helped me maintain muscle ups, human flags, handstands on the rings, and even 1-arm pull-ups without even trying or doing hardly any strength training. It was the best way to gain overall strength and power I've ever done, and it was kind of surprising. I realized that after I'd been tumbling 3 or 4 days per week, about 90 minutes per day. Now, before you say you don't know how to do that, let me explain. Tumbling involves sprinting, jumping, striking, and landing. Things everyone can do. When I tumble, I use a round off, which starts with a sprint, then a jump to a lunge, then striking the floor with the hands, which generates about 1,000 pounds of force based on my size, then the feet, which generates about 2,000 pounds of force, and then the backflip, and then the landing, which generates about 600 pounds of force. It's a few seconds of maximal output with about a minute of rest in between and multiple sets of this. Little did I know, this is exactly the same as the short sprint interval training study that shows increases in vertical jump, peak power, and testosterone, except for one thing. It involves extreme forces amplifying the effects. I'll make a separate video on this subject. But let's make a new name for this kind of training right now. FIRE, Force Interval Resistance Training. And this can be done with anything. Of course, you can do it with sprints at the most basic level. Up a level is vaults. We have a 25-vault workout using something simple like a block. Interval training with swipes and flares from power moves does the same thing. And katas, which are required to advance to the next level in Powerbatics, is the most advanced version. But back to weightlifting. The final way for today in which weights should be used or for prehab and rehab, which should be a significant part of your training. When I'm talking trash for fun, I say that weightlifting is like rehab. It's isolated body part training that should be done to regain strength after an injury. All jokes aside, one of the best uses of weights is warm-up and flexibility. This is done by weighted stretches. An example is a body roll, or AKA Jefferson curl, with weight for hamstrings and the lower back. This one move alone has helped me maintain a strong lower back and hamstring flexibility simultaneously. Another example, which is a little more advanced, I used to do a low squat with 225 pounds and sit at the bottom in a deep stretch. Things like that. This is done before, during, and after training. The secret is not just saving it for workouts, but doing it throughout the day and ultimately being active, moving more, and having fun, which is the ultimate secret. But honestly, this is just scratching the surface. So see you in the next video and in training soon.